So welcome to another edition of the Influence Global podcast, and I'm really chuffed to bits to have a really good friend of mine who I've known for many years, and that is James Erskine, who is the CEO and founder of Rocket. A lot of experience in the influencer marketing, and James and I are going to talk today about the evolution of the influencer marketing industry and how it's changed over the years. So, James, lovely to see you on the show today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So perhaps if we before we get stuck into the weeds of our subject matter, tell us, our viewers and listeners, a little bit about your former background before you sort of got involved in Rocket.
Sure. Well, my background is in commercial radio, initially on the programming side and then on the commercial side. And lots of the work that I was doing in commercial radio was how to get brands involved in the content side of commercial radio. And actually, lots of the skills became transferable with influencer marketing, briefing presenters, understanding that you were migrating communities and niche communities. I've worked on a promotion with the fishing show that used to be on Talk Sport, for example.
Oh,
So lots and lots of different partnerships and commercial partnerships with big players, the likes of Global, Virgin Radio, Bauer, and I then moved into the space of online promotions, looking at online blogging, online content, and video content. And a natural extension of that became influencers. And we ran our first influencer partnership back with Gleam in 2012, when Gleam was a two-man operation and we were a three-man operation. And it was incredibly successful. And it was around the applied experience that I'd got from commercial radio and briefing the talent in the right way that we then expanded our influencer offering. And at Rocket, in addition to media partnerships and social content, influencer marketing remains one of our key pillars of delivery for our client base now. So yes, we work for the likes of Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, a number of different universities, Merlin Entertainment on social content. So influencer is very much a core part of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis and has been for a long time.
Yeah, great to hear. Great to hear. So, in the early days of influencer marketing, it was very much to the top of funnel, but I think there was still this view about those that didn't understand it too much. It was very much the Wild West of the advertising and marketing industry, wasn't it? And that's largely because of ignorance in some cases, a few bad actors, like most cases. But it is evolving quite a lot now, from a lot more professionalism in as trade body representation. I think the people at the top of the food chain are really all over their analytics, and you've got better talent agencies really understanding the space in a way that perhaps they hadn't always before. So just give me your perspective over that time.
I think every era of influencer marketing that we've seen has come with its challenges. Even now, there are challenges. I think you're right to say that initially there were a few bad apples. We were in a sort of era of the Wild West. I think what took us out of the era of the Wild West were talent getting more professional and having an understanding of briefs and commercial incentives. I'll never forget Hannah Witten, an influencer, a talent who I've always admired from afar. The first time I worked with her, I said, "I bet the analytics really bores you, doesn't it?" And she said, no, absolutely it doesn't. And I realized just how patronizing I'd sounded. She was really aware of her commercial value and the difference she made to a brief. And that era of Wild West sort of then developed into an era of enthusiasm, where I think we got really good talent, much better agents. So talent agents that were aware and understood a client and a commercial brand's incentives and reasons for working with talent. I think we disappeared into an era of what I would term click heads after that. So you're right, data is incredibly important to professionalize this sector. And it's really important to bear in mind the effect that influencer work is having on an end result. But if you base all of it on a click, it's a race to the bottom. And you're right, now the influencer work is being done beyond just the top of the funnel. It could be second tier content. It could be using influencers in content that brands are creating.
Yeah.
There's a different look and feel to influencer content.
100%. And I think the other the other thing I would add to that, of course, is that you know, in the early days, it was obviously all about celebrity campaigns, and whilst that still plays a part, what we've seen is a lot more growth in the micro and the nano influencer campaigns working really, really well. It means that you can have more of them within a budget. And a lot of these individuals have got great niches. So I think that has been something that I've certainly seen a big growth in. Would you concur with that?
Oh, 100%. I think if you were to say influencer marketing to the average person on the street that doesn't work in this sector, they would still picture teeth whitener product on Instagram. And I realize that is some of the industry, but it's of course so much more well developed than that. And there are influencer and communities of interest around all sorts of different niches, exactly as you say. And I was having a conversation with a blogger, if you remember that turn of phrase. She writes a blog called Babes About Town, and it's a parenting blog to help parents come up with things to do with their children. And she's been working on that blog for a very long time. And of course, it's changed. She's become a published author in the meantime. She still works her Instagram feed hard. And it's a small niche community, but it's incredibly valuable to mums and dads in London that are looking for things to do with their children. But it's really powerful because you've got to know her over a long period of time.
Of course. And I think we shouldn't also be obsessed with follower numbers, but more around engagement rates. And I know that's a change from the early days because it was all about follower numbers, but now because of some of the tech platforms that are spotting these fake views, fake followers, we are seeing those that are really shining, that have grown their audiences organically, do well, aren't we?
There's a number of issues with follower numbers. One is it's a vanity metric. Two, you've identified it's easy to create a larger following, whether that's circles that follow each other or like each other's posts, or whether that is something more insidious and something that takes over. The other thing, Gordon, that's worth bearing in mind is even with engagement rates, there are a number of influencers and a number of different content creators that don't work. I mean, in our experience, and we've been doing stuff since 2012 with influencers, as I was saying, you can still now find blogs and sites and social posts that work brilliantly to drive traffic for a book aimed at 5 to 8 year olds that don't work to drive traffic for a book for 10 to 12 year olds. And until you've got the data on exactly what works and what doesn't work, you're still playing with engagement rates that may not matter, because you can engage all you want with a post, but it might not result in the positive action that you're trying to get an audience to take part in and follow on and look at the next item.
Do you think there are too many influencer platforms in the market?
In short, yes. Um, I think it's fun. It's funny because there's an argument on there are too many platforms, and I have nothing against creators that are signed up to lots and lots of different platforms. I think if you purely look at the platformification of influencer marketing, you're on a race to the bottom without an element of strategy and without an element of somebody keeping control and having a personal touch. It is something that won't work because even controlling platformed content is an art form. You need somebody with the skill set in order to brief the influencer in the right way to hold on to what makes their content great. What platforms do is sometimes make the brief a little bit too prescriptive, and that sometimes can actually mean you're not working with the best influencers for your particular campaign.
And I remembered actually something that really did irritate me is when sometimes there's a brief or a request for influencers, and it looks like it's going to like 150 influencers, and it's I saw one that said dear influencer, and I'm thinking, you know, if that's going to annoy anybody more, then absolutely that is. If they feel like they're one of 100 and it's a lucky prize draw, then, you know, I would have thought those companies that work really, really well with creating relationships, let's be honest, that have understood, taking the time to reach out to those influencers, acknowledge the content that they're already doing, and finding a way in which to engage with them that makes them feel valued and maybe piques their interest. Because that's the other thing. Great influencers, you may not be the only game in town for them, and
Completely.
you have to win some of them over, and quite rightly so.
And Jordan, you've also highlighted the reason why lots of the skill of working in influencer marketing isn't necessarily a new skill. It's the same as writing Dear Journalist on a PR press release.
Absolutely, yes.
And you've got to make the talent feel special and feel wanted, or communicate with an agent that say, the reason we're talking to you about this particular campaign, whether that be for a big global partner or whether that be for a small niche brand, is for a specific reason. And if you let people know that, that's important.
Yeah.
And just on platforms and making influencers feel special, I've been through the mill on that. We built a tech business in the influencer space that didn't work because there were so many platforms, and we invested far too much money in a tech side that was never going to set the world alight. And the ultimate competitor with any platform is the social network sites themselves. And that's why I think the platform business is a good one. And of course, it works if you're looking for niche content at scale. But there are also platforms that are held onto and data held onto by experts and agencies that can make those talent feel special. If you've spoken to them about Skittles, you know not to speak to them about M&Ms the following week. So,
Yes,
yes.
you're absolutely right. So true. I mean, I think the other growth area is in live stream, of course, isn't it? And social commerce. So that, you know, in the early days, it was always about brand awareness and maybe an opportunity to engage with click-throughs. But now you've got TikTok shops. You've got a lot more live streamers, you know, selling. I mean, I remember, was it Amazon and Alibaba in 2020 putting out a request for 100,000 influencers? I mean, if that doesn't speak volumes about how they saw the value of these individuals with these very tight niche communities, it's quite incredible, isn't it?
It's incredible. And if only there was a thing 15 years ago where you could hover over a video, click on the product, and immediately add it to your basket.
Yeah.
Well, newsflash, there was, but we weren't ready for it as consumers. And now it seems that we are ready for it. And TikTok Shop is a really good example of both creators being able to monetize in a new way and brands be able to monetize in a new way as well.
Yeah.
And commerce doesn't stop at TikTok Shop. Commerce is also in terms of partnerships with influencers, partnerships that can create brands of their own. You look at, and perhaps it's a bad example because it ended so badly, but you look at Kanye West and Adidas. That partnership there was about creating a new clothing range and new products. And that's easily done on a smaller scale with the right influencer and with the right content. You can look back at influencers' merch as a very long time ago, and to develop that and to create influencer merchandise in partnership with a brand, I think is very much a way that we can look for the future for influencers and their new ways of making money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've seen that with the likes of Molly May, haven't we? And
Yeah.
others have got created their own ranges. And from my point of view, I think influencers have an audience. They want to talk to them. They want to create content, but they don't want to do often the entire back office solution. So I think brands that really understand that and can provide almost like a turnkey provision. So all of the influencers got to do is effectively just promote it and send them to a shop that has been pre-set up and that's been provided by the supply side. Then I think then it's great success, isn't it?
Well, one of the pieces of work that we did on the subject of making it easy for influencers was we created a house, a romantic fiction house on behalf of one of our publisher clients, Simon & Schuster. And what that how that worked brilliantly was we worked with a number of different titles, and we worked with those titles all at once in one house over one weekend, creating the content to then drip feed across those channels over an extended period of time. And the reason why that was so successful is it ticked all the boxes. We made the creators, the influencers feel special. We had the right brand messages for each individual book, each individual title. And we also had a client that was willing to back us to create multiple content strands in one moment of production. So it worked in terms of creating efficiencies. And all of the creators had been vetted by us to ensure that they worked for the different titles that we were working with them on. And that is a good example of looking at something through a commerce perspective and a prism of driving sales, but actually creating really nice content in the meantime.
Yeah, yeah. So as we look through this sort of evolution of change, and there's been a lot of talk about AI affecting the creator economy, good or bad. I think the jury is still out, really. There's a lot that we can look at that will help processing and ideation. But there could be some concerns about copyright and who owns what, and people losing out through that. What do you think about the next phase?
I think the next phase of influencer marketing, I think we've been through the era of the deal makers, and the deal makers are doing big deals at the top end of the food chain, moving TV budgets into influencer. And that's happening on a macro marketing level. On a smaller, more applied level, I think we're looking into the era of the niche, the era of the AI, and also the era of the audio. We're still yet, I think, to crack what influencer audio content looks like. And I'm aware of podcasts. I know podcasts are almost a rite of passage in that almost everybody has one. You've been good enough to come on mine. I'm very happy to be on yours. But I also think that there isn't the right level of expertise to create a podcast for those niche audiences in the right way. So I think niches and finding the right podcast voice for influencers is going to be a next small step. On the era of niche, I think people are going to start splitting their content up. So I think soon we're not going to see on the same Instagram feed people talking about how they are both a parent and a home decoration enthusiast. I think they will split that up so that they can appeal more directly to a more niche audience.
Absolutely.
And finally, on AI, I think it's a scary place. We've got AI presenters of podcasts. There's a podcast called The Smart Seven that's actually presented by an AI version of the original host already out, that is affecting the way that we're engaging with that news podcast. And that's just the start. As AI gets cleverer and cleverer, we're going to be able to create news presenters. We're going to be able to create content that looks and feels like it's genuine and human loved. Now, you're always going to need a human being in the background to sense check it, but it's an exciting area, and I can see that growing in terms of mass content creation.
Do you worry about deep fake? Do you worry about, the proliferation of recommendations from influencers that aren't, basically, and
Yes.
that somebody else has used that, and that could have real brand safety issues?
I massively do. I mean, it's not necessarily a new problem. You've had Martin Lewis take Facebook to court for his face appearing on Facebook ads that he had nothing to do with.
Yeah.
If you were to upload something to TikTok now that was a deep fake with an influencer saying how much they loved a product, it wouldn't be taken down for a matter of days at least. So there is a real opportunity to subvert this technology and use it for bad means. And yeah, it's definitely something that's worth worrying about. And for the sake of argument, I think what influencers need to be doing is just ensuring their audiences that they won't appear elsewhere unless there's a specific rubber stamp that is them. They won't be appearing on other sites. They would never put their name to a product, things that they've always done. But it's really important to ensure that the audience are as well informed as they can be, because the trouble with deep fakes and with fake news, which is coming from the same thing, is it's down to the individual user to be better educated. And that's a really, really tough thing. One of the things that we do, we work with Media Smart, who are the advertising industry's educator to the youth audience, to children. And one of the pieces of work that they've done is talk about fake news and how to identify it, as well as talking about influencers and what influencers are like in real life. So yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, just on that last point, of course, the difficulty with fake news, it's not just the recipient that's receiving it, it's the fact that then it's shared. So, I like to think I'm a beacon of trust. Most people do trust what I say. So, of course, if I am merely sharing something because I believe it to be true, therefore it comes with my authority and trust. And of course, other people could think, oh, well, it must be true because Gordon says it is. And if it isn't, of course, it damages my reputation as well, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. And I've fallen for fake news. I believe that quote from Trump where he said, I'd only ever run for president for the Republican Party because they're not as clever as the Democrat Party. And that quote was attributed to a newspaper called the Boston Herald. It's not until you realize that the Boston newspaper is the Boston Globe, the Boston Herald doesn't exist. So it's easy
to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is easy to fall for it.
Yeah, amazing. Well, look, it's been lovely to talk to you today and get your take on the evolution of influencer marketing. And I still think it's a very exciting industry to be part of. And great. So how can people find out a little bit more about you and your business?
I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. You can find me. Twitter, I'm James Erskine, X, formerly known as Twitter, I should say. LinkedIn, you can find me, James Erskine. And if you want to know about Rocket, which is youth and family marketing and content, you can go to wearerocket.co.uk. And yeah, it is a really exciting place that we're in, Gordon. So it's good to keep talking about the evolution and talking about influencer marketing.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.